Good morning everybody, and unless of course you're watching this video in the evening, in that case good evening, and you're watching Time Travel TV, and welcome to the year 1869. So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about trains! Yay! Specifically American trains. So I got an American flag here, American flag there, a map of America. I'm dressed in the style of an American. This is all American today. We're going to be looking at the Transcontinental Railroad across America, which is a mouthful, but we can see what we can do about that. So, where does the story begin? It starts in 1865 and the American Civil War is over. Oh my god, that's far too much excitement for one day. So, what happens? Well, many people after the Civil War want to leave the hustly bustly life of the East Coast and move to start a new life in the West Coast. But there was a problem. It took a long time to get there. If you lived in, say, Pennsylvania, you'd have to catch a train to Missouri, where you would be able to catch a wagon train from Missouri to California. The problem with this is crossing the Great Plains by wagon is long and dangerous. It takes about 6 months in total. Alternatively, you can catch a ship from the East Coast down to South America to San Francisco, which would also take around 6 months. So whatever way you look at it, it's going to take a long time. Abraham Lincoln in 1865 green-lighted a project to have a railroad linking the East to the West, starting in Independence, Missouri. He called it the Transcontinental Railroad, as it went all the way along. Anyway, so what happened was he gave the contract to two rival companies. The Union Pacific Railroad Company, that would start in Independence, Missouri, work their way inland, and the Central Pacific Railroad Company, that would start at the Pacific coast and work inland. He didn't pay them. Well, he did pay them. He didn't pay them with this stuff called money. He paid them in other stuff called land. How it would be is that this piece of railroad track, he would pay them in land either side. 100 metres of land on each side. They can then sell this land off to people who want to build houses and start a new life in the West. So what happened is 1865, work began, and off they went. The Union Pacific Railroad Company working inland, and the Central Pacific Railroad Company working inland. There was a midpoint that they would work up to. The first one to get to that midpoint would have the honour of hammering in the last pin. The chairman of the Central Pacific Railroad Company wanted that to be him. The problem is that the work with progress was slow for him because their company had to go through the Sierra Nevada, which is a big mountain range. So they would have to go round mountains, over mountains, and through mountains, blowing holes with dynamite. Luckily, they had lots of Chinese workers that worked very quickly. They laid 10 miles of track a day. On the other hand, the Union Pacific Railroad Company had it going quite easily. They had to lay across the Great Plains, which was, well, to be honest, quite quick, because plains are by nature quite flat. Despite this, in 1869, the first company to get there, the central point, was the Central Pacific Railroad Company. 10 days later, the Union Pacific Railroad Company got there. And on the 10th of May, the chairman of the Central Pacific Railroad Company picked up his silver hammer. He wielded it over and hit the golden pin square in the middle in. Actually, no, he didn't. He actually missed it. Then he hit it again, and this time he hit it, and in it went. So we have a complete railroad! So let's see. Okay. Get a coal. Okay. All aboard! And across it went. Did you see how quick that was? In fact, that only took 6 days, cutting it down from 6 months, which is immensely important. People flocked in their thousands to get to the West, making the West hugely populated, because before the West was really sparsely populated and the East was incredibly densely populated. This spread out the people in America, because the thing is that Americans, at this time especially, didn't like being close to other people. And when they meant that, they didn't mean they didn't like living in blocks of flats and things. They thought if somebody lived within 100 yards of them, that was too close. They wanted big plots of land. So this is mainly why people moved. This is one of the big reasons why people moved west. This, although, had quite negative impacts for the Native American population. See, the thing is, they didn't always see eye to eye with the whites. So by bringing more people to where the Native Americans were, created conflict between them. Not only that, the Native Americans relied heavily on the buffalo. Now, to them, the buffalo were like supermarkets on legs. They used their meat for eating, they used their tongues as delicacies, they used their hides for buildings, they used their skulls for ceremonial purposes. The only thing they didn't use was the heart, which they left on the Great Plains for the Great Spirit. They believed the Great Spirit created everything, like God. The problem with the railroad is that it cut the migration in half. So they could no longer follow the buffalo migration, which is what they would do. They were nomadic people, they would follow the buffalo around. And when the buffalo tried to cross, what would happen was that the train would often hit them and get derailed. So the railroad companies employed buffalo hunters like Buffalo Bill, who shot thousands of them. In fact, at the start of the 19th century, it was roughly about 30 million buffalo. By the end, the Smithsonian struggled to find 30 good examples, which is a hell of a lot less. So this was immensely significant. I mean, since the 19th century, the buffalo herds have increased in population and back to normal. Well, not back to normal, but they've recovered now. But this was immensely significant, and I would argue that the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, apart from the American Civil War, is the most important thing that happened in American history in the 19th century. And I would say that this is really significant, and we are still feeling the effects of this, in America at least, feeling the effects of this particular event in history. And I think that's a perfect place to end this video. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, you may subscribe and watch more of my videos, and I'll see you later. Cheerio!